Hola, buen dia. It's me, Peppermint. And when I'm not on RuPaul's Drag Race or simply being New York City's sweetest diva, I'm tuned into the fabulously empowering Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice Power Hour, coming to you every weeknight at 7 p.m. live from our good old friends at the BRCSJ Virtual HQ via their Facebook page. Tune in tonight.
Need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.
Social justice, power hour, power hour, power hour. Social justice, power hour, power hour, power hour.
Good evening to our friends on the East Coast. Good afternoon to our friends in the West. And good in-between time to our friends in the in-between spaces. Welcome, 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 my friends. Welcome to the Social Justice Power Hour. Welcome to the virtual headquarters of the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. My name is Robert Seda Schreiber. I'm the chief activist here at the center and your host for this evening, as I have been for the past 16 months. The Power Hour has come to you every single weeknight since the pandemic started. Over 350 some odd shows, many of them very odd indeed. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to our old friends, and welcome to our new friends, because I know that our guests tonight have brought some friends, some fam, some followers, and some volunteers to the yard. We have Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action, and we have Alex Navarro, a dedicated volunteer and the co-lead for city gun violence in California, Moms Demand. We are thrilled and honored to have them both with us. But before we get to it, before we chop it up about this incredibly important subject that I'm thrilled to talk about tonight, because I feel like it's something we have not addressed enough here in the Power Hour, so excited about this conversation. But before we do that, as I said at the outset, we are here every freaking weeknight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So we want you all to come back. To do that, we want to entice you just a little bit to tell you some of the guests that are coming up beyond this evening. Tomorrow night, every Tuesday night, we have queer yoga. Our LGBTQI community, friends, allies, and family are all welcome. Take a breath, both literally and figuratively, in virtual community, as Master Jasmani leads us to virtual nirvana. So come out for that. And then Wednesday, we continue our new Comic Book Wednesday, talking to queer comic book creators in an industry that's not always welcoming of such. So we will have Steve Orlando with us. And last week we had the wonderful Anthony Oliveira. We have our Throwback Thursdays this month. We're bringing back some of our meaningful moments from the past episodes. As I said, we've done this almost 400 times now. Valerie Jarrett, Patton Oswalt, Mateo Ascapor, Wayne Brady, just some of the folks we're bringing back on Throwback Thursdays. Then coming up, we have Andrew Aiden, who was a close advisor of John Lewis. The anniversary of his passing was just yesterday. This book run is the last piece of the March trilogy about John Lewis's life, and Andrew's going to come talk to us about that. We have John McWhorter, the incredible thinker, one of the greatest thinkers of our generation, I believe, with his new book, 9 Nasty Words, English in the Gutter, Then, Now, and Forever. We have the beautiful Maggie Smith, poet, her new collection, Goldenrod. She's going to come and recite some work from that. Kurt Anderson, Evil Geniuses, The Unmaking of American. He's going to be here on the paperback eve of the release of the paperback for that. The Gunkel, Stephen Rowley, the author of Lily and the Octopus and the editor. That's going to be fabulous. And Maurice Carlos Ruffin coming back to us. He was on Once Straight Out of New Orleans, coming back to us. The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, coming out in August. And finally, Jemiah Wilson's going to be with us. This book is feminist, an intersectional primer for next-gen change makers. That conversation is going to be fire. Don't miss it. Don't miss all of that. And that's just highlights of what's coming up on the Power Hour. So make sure you all come back 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, each and every night here at the Facebook page of the BRCSJ Center for Social Justice. And finally, one last thing, y'all. For those of you in the Princeton, New Jersey area, this is the only area appearance live, like with singing, dancing, hugging, in person. Jill Sobule, I Kissed a Girl, supermodel, coming out live in concert July 30th, a special benefit for our BRCSJ Center. Please do get your tickets now. They are selling fast. And make sure you get your VIP after party tickets to hang with Jill. She is as delightful in person as she is in song. So enough, because gosh, we have a conversation to have tonight. We have a communion to gather tonight. We have some folks. Shannon Watts is the founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, the leading force for gun violence prevention with chapters in all 50 states and a powerful grassroots network of moms that have successfully affected change at the local, state, and national level, as well as being involved with Everytown for Gun Safety and is an active board member for Emerge America, one of the nation's leading organizations for recruiting and training women to run for office. Shannon is also the author of Fight Like a Mother, and her writing has appeared in Vogue, Refinery 29, Time, The Washington Post, The Hill, among many, 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 many others. She is a mother of 5, and of course, say it with me, the NRA's worst nightmare. As a bonus tonight, as a huge bonus, as a great honor, we will also welcome Alex Navarro, a dedicated volunteer at California Moms Demand, as City Gun Violence Co-Lead, a Latina member of the LGBTQI community and the mom of 2 young children herself. As Shannon says, quote, "You may not see yourself as an agent of change yet. After all, you've probably been plenty busy taking care of your kids and making a living. You might think you don't have the time, energy, or guts to be an activist. Stop that. You have so much potential to affect change more than you know." So tonight, friends, let us learn together how to be those agents of change as you join me in welcoming to our BRCSJ Center for Social Justice Power Hour from Moms Demand Action, founder Shannon Watts, and dedicated volunteer Alex Navarro. Shannon, Alex, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. That was quite an intro.
That's my job, and now I'm done talking. You two are, now it's all you. They've seen enough of this. We've done almost 400 shows, so now they want to hear from you. And let's start at the beginning, because for the 3 people in our audience who don't know, Shannon, can you start us off? I was going to say tell us the secret origin, but it's not so secret, but it is really important. It's a wonderful story of how you started Moms Demand first and foremost.
Yeah, I was a mom of 5. At the time, I lived in Indiana and saw that there was an active shooter in Newtown, Connecticut, a city I'd never heard of. And like everyone else in America that day, I sort of sat on the side of my bed and just watched this horrific news unfold. And it was just so unfathomable that 20 children and 6 educators would be murdered in the sanctity of an American elementary school. And I really thought, okay, I want to join something like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That was something that was so pivotal to me, when I was growing up in the 80s. And I went online, I looked for it, it didn't exist. At least not in the way I imagined it, which was this badass army of women and moms all across the country that would take on the gun lobby. And so I started a Facebook page. And if you know anything about type A women like Alex, they came to me in droves, and it went from being this online conversation to being the largest offline movement in the country. We are now larger than the NRA. We have a chapter in every single state of the country. And I also think that people often don't think about this as a winning issue, but it is. I think we should talk about this in the context of the fact, the reality, which is we have stopped the NRA's agenda. The NRA is weaker than it's ever been, and our movement is stronger than it's ever been.
And it's such an inspiration to so many. And I want to pivot right to you, Alex, and talk about how Shannon's work inspired you where you work, because your journey is equally interesting and the work that you've done. So can you share with us how you got involved and how you've then subsequently been more and more and more and more involved. I feel like Mom's Demand is one of those things that, like, you dip your toe in and then you find yourself chin deep in a matter of minutes and thrilled about it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm born and raised in San Francisco, and I always felt that activism just ran deep into my veins. I spent 10 years living in Europe, and I felt like I always missed out on a lot of things that were happening here in the States. And so when Sandy Hook happened, I was actually visiting my parents in the Bay Area for the holidays. And at the time, my oldest daughter was 6 months old. And so I couldn't get it out of my mind that we were in the process of moving back to the States. And so when I went back to Holland after my vacation, I was reading every single article about Sandy Hook. And on one of those, I ran into a paragraph that was talking about this woman from Indiana called Shannon Watts. And what captured me was, wow, this is some chick who is taking on the gun lobby. And I said out loud, wow, this woman's got balls. And whatever she's got going on, I want to be a part of that. So I joined Moms Demand Action, and my very first post on Facebook was January 15th. And if I think about it now, Sandy Hook had only happened a month before. And so I was like thinking, I don't know what this is, but this sounds like something I want to be a part of. And it doesn't matter that I'm not even in the States right now. I can help raise awareness for my friends and family back home. And so because Moms Demand Action had a very strong social media game already put in place, I was able to take part in those actions and help amplify that message to create change. And so when I moved back to the States, I dove right in, and I'm a photographer. So I was going to every single event in California, taking pictures. And it was just so amazing to me to be a part of something and to witness everything happening from the very beginning to this whole movement that Shannon created. Never in my life thought I was going to meet Shannon. And now it's like we're practically neighbors. We're in opposite towns in Northern California. So it's really cool. We've done some pretty awesome things together. So that's basically how I got involved, and started off as a social media lead, and then became the very first city gun violence lead in the whole country. So it's been pretty amazing. We've done some really cool things, but at the same time, the work that we're doing is life-saving and changing so many people's lives. So yeah, it's been really, really awesome.
And I thank you both for the work you do at the outset. I just want to make sure that's crystal, how important and how inspirational you are to so many in our community. And I want to talk, I have so many synapses firing, and there's so many threads I want to pull out already. I feel like I want to just have a power 2 hours. I feel like an hour is not be enough, but let's do our darndest. And don't feel like I have to ask one of you a question. If you have something you want to share, just, bring it right out. As I said, I'd love to, just sit in the corner and watch the two of you converse about these issues, because you're far better at it, far more inspirational, and far more knowledgeable. But Shannon, let's talk about, I want to get into personally how this affects both of you. And I think that's really important. I want to talk a lot about that. But before we do, I do want to talk organizationally about it too. Because when you started this, as you said, it started, you saw the need, you saw the lack of a platform, and you created a Facebook entity. Did you imagine what it was going to be? And if not, when you first started, when did you realize it was going to be this thing? And once it became this thing, this is the part that amazes me. Not that you did it, not that it was so successful, because knowing of you, that just makes sense. But what amazes me and what inspires me the most is once it ballooned, it grew, it just became this absolute wonderful organization of all these different folks across the country. How did you have the mind and the energy and the wherewithal to put it together in such a powerful way?
Oh, I think in many ways it was like lightning in a bottle. And, there's something to be said for being naive I didn't realize, this underbelly in America that existed that would immediately start threatening me with death, sexual assault, to me, to my daughters. And I guess I didn't ever doubt that this group of angry, committed women could take on the gun lobby and win. Now, in retrospect, the odds of that happening were very small. And it would certainly be a bigger issue for me in my personal life than I ever imagined, right? Taking on this volunteer role now for almost a decade and being the tip of the spear in many ways on an issue that can be very volatile. Not polarizing, just to be clear, because the vast majority of Americans support stronger gun laws, but it can be volatile because there's this group of gun extremists in this country that have been created by the gun lobby. And I can remember in the first few hours, I was starting to get direct messages on Facebook, and my public information was out there. I never imagined, that I would be a public figure. So people were texting me and calling me and sending me emails. And it was women who were saying, like, I want to do this where I live. How do I join you? How do I get involved in this? And I just intuitively started putting them together all across the country and then organizing and starting this organization, right? This grassroots movement. And again, I think part of it is luck. I think part of it is these brilliant women who came to the table, mostly women, with these skill sets that I didn't have, whether they were lawyers or communicators or policy experts or organizers, all things that I could never do on my own. I came to the table with skills as a communicator. And so it was luck. It was the brilliance of volunteers. It was a realization that this had to be done and that no one else was going to do it, and that our children were all in jeopardy. And I have just been fascinated to watch over the last decade. We've had volunteers come and go, but we're bigger and stronger than we've ever been. And there are always people who join us and are so motivated to make sure that this happens. And I say, when you get involved in social issues, it is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. That's the way the system is set up. I know incremental change is frustrating. I think that's why moms are so good at it, because it's really frustrating to raise kids too. There's a lot of incremental change that goes on, but it is also a relay race, and you have to pass the baton to other people when you need to take a break and prioritize your family or yourself. And so I've just been amazed to watch this grow and evolve and get even stronger over the last decade. And I think Alex is a great example of that. She's been involved from the very beginning and has taken on so many different roles, has stepped back when she needed to and stepped forward when she wanted to, and has just made such a huge difference in the state of California.
And I think that's an important piece that you just mentioned. And again, there's going to be so many smaller things, because I think it's really important to focus on these kind of smaller things. I think the fact that it is a collective of moms, for the most part, there's this understanding, what you just said was really important, that you can step back sometimes, because I think other organizations don't understand that need and that part of the journey that will be really, really involved. But then there may be personal or political or life issues that take hold, and you need to say, I need 5 minutes, or I need 5 months, or I need 5 years, and then they come back. And I've seen it, right?
And you're right. We are mothers and others now, right? We're not just women. We're not just moms. We're also students. But to your point, the other piece of that, I think that is unique to our organization is because we're moms and understanding that you're going to go in and out and the work will still be here. And we value every single second you spend on this, even if it's just to send an email. But the other piece of this is that, when I got involved in activism, which I had never been an activist before, what I realized was that often it was men that sort of set the strategy and were in the spotlighted organizations, and that women were asked to make the snacks and get the venues and do some of the more menial tasks. And I wanted an organization where women did it all, soup to nuts. Yes, you're going to make sure that the church is booked, for this rally, and you're probably going to bring some cookies, but you're also going to be doing the news that night. You're going to do all the interviews, and you're going to set the strategy and what's best for where you live in your locality. And I think that's very empowering to women to make them want to get involved. I mean, I think we've created this brand essentially that makes women feel like badasses.
If I may, and I never like to correct a guest per se, I don't think, and forgive me, I don't think it makes women feel like badasses. It makes them realize that they are badasses.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So then that brings us to you, Alex. This is one of the other things that's incredible at Moms Demand, is that it's such an inclusive organization that you find a lot of organizations will be, well, this is our focus, and that community is not so important to us, or that community is not as necessary. They have their own pieces. They have their own folks to watch out for them. But Moms Demand has always been about everybody's coming to the party. Everybody's under the umbrella. And Alex, you're a perfect example of that you are the essence of intersectionality. You bring the Latina community, and you bring the LGBTQI community. And how important was that, those two identities, for you to bring to the table at Moms Demand?
You know, gun violence affects us all. We know that there are 100 Americans that are shot and killed every single day, with many more wounded. And you bring a good point. This intersectionality between, being a woman of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, a mother, things like that, it crosses my mind every single day. I'm not a survivor of gun violence. I don't know anybody in my family who has been personally affected by it, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. And so I feel like it's important to me to constantly raise my voice, and not only for raising awareness, but also for our survivors. We're a nation of survivors in this country, and we don't have to live and die like this, experiencing the threat of gun violence every single day. And I feel like I've heard so many stories from survivors that say, I can't get out of bed certain days, or I can't even speak through my tears on certain days because it's just too much. And so I feel like for me, it's important to continue that work for them on the days that they can't. I can't imagine speaking about my own two daughters in the past tense. When I hear stories of mothers talking about their children as they were something, it's just heartbreaking to me. And so I feel like it's just so important to carry on those stories and to say the names of these family members that people have lost to gun violence. And so I personally feel like bias motivated crimes are rising, and LGBTQ people continue to be targeted for who they are and who we love. From the Pulse shootings in Orlando to youth suicides and anti-trans violence across the country, the LGBTQ community is suffering as a result of our lax gun laws. So it's important for us to do the work and to continue to raise this awareness as well, because it's everybody that's affected.
And that's a wonderful point. And Shannon, was that something that you needed to do a dedicated outreach to reach out to marginalized communities, reach out to folks with different identities who represented outside of whatever spectrum was already involved with Moms Demand? Did you do a dedicated outreach, or did it happen to fall into place because there were so many people who were passionate about this issue?
Oh, I mean, it's been a journey. You know, I have learned so much in the last almost decade now. And part of that was, I was a white woman from the suburbs who started this organization because I was afraid my kids weren't safe in their schools. Full stop. That's what got me off the sidelines. Shame on me and so many other white women who waited so long until, it started to make us afraid. Because women, Black and brown women, have been on the front line of this issue in their communities for decades, and really have been doing this work unseen and unreported on. The daily gun violence in this country that is tearing at the fabric of our communities, that makes up the vast majority of the 100 Americans who are shot and killed every single day. In terms of gun homicide. And it's so important, I think, that white women pick up the activism mantle and bear the burden and get involved and get off the sidelines and use their voices and their votes on this issue. And what I've seen is that as I said, it's a journey, and we've learned so much along the way, which is it isn't just about mass shootings or school shootings. It's about gun suicides. It's about gun homicides. It's about unintentional shootings. It's about domestic gun violence. And it is about making sure that any marginalized community is the focus and the priority of the work that we're doing. And so the interesting thing is, you do all that work, and then something like the horrific shooting tragedy in Parkland happens. And our organization tripled in size overnight. And again, it was, white suburban parents who were afraid their kids weren't safe in their schools. And then it's the education process all over again, right? Of explaining to those new volunteers who we welcome with open arms, this is our priority, this is our focus as an organization, and thank you for joining us. And we understand that you're afraid, but so are these other communities across the country. I think for me, a really pivotal moment was that I was on my book tour, and I was in Boston, and it was a group of largely white people who had come to hear me talk. And our membership lead for Boston was there, a Black woman, and she stood up and she said, "I'm so glad all of you are here today. I'm so grateful that you took the time. But I got to ask you a question. When Black communities in Boston have events like Black Lives Matters events, or there are trials, or there are rallies or vigils, do you show up for those too?" And I think it's a really important point, which is when you're part of a community, you have to have partnerships. And those partnerships can't just be self-serving. They have to be two-way partnerships. And again, Alex is just so amazing at her passion and her ability to create partnerships all across the state of California that truly represent Moms Demand Action as being an organization that is focused on all types of gun violence. And it is largely in part because of those partnerships that we've unlocked tens of millions of dollars in the state of California for gun violence intervention and interruption programs. And Alex, you might want to talk a little bit more about that work, but you've really been key to making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, was the very first city gun violence lead for our organization. And to be honest, I didn't know what the hell I was doing or what was required of the role, but I knew that I had to form these relationships with other organizations that have been doing this work for decades. And since 2004, California had only had $9 million allocated for violence intervention and prevention programs for the whole state. And so 3 years ago, we started working on how do we get more funding for these programs that are doing everyday work, breaking the cycle of violence in some of our biggest cities. And so we were able to get $30 million, which was huge. But then the pandemic hit. And so then it was like, are we still going to get this money? Because now COVID has exacerbated a lot of the issues that we were having before COVID. But instead, these organizations are now being violence interrupters and also virus interrupters, because they're having people that are disproportionately affected by violence and the virus. So we knew that we needed to have more funding, and violence was just going up. And so we were asking Governor Newsom to increase funding from $9 million to $114 million. And this was all great during our advocacy week. And then a couple of months later, it all sort of faded. And then I got word that wildfire prevention was going to be one of the major issues for our governor, and putting funding towards that. And so I came up with an idea to get every single Californian involved in this campaign to raise awareness on why gun violence affects us all. So we created this really big banner, and we had it travel from San Diego all the way to Sacramento. And we included students, survivors, teachers, trauma surgeons, physical therapists, faith leaders, just anybody who thinks that violence intervention is important. And so we were tweeting at the governor every single day. saying, hey, this is important to us. You need to do something about it. And to my surprise, and I think to everybody's surprise, we ended up getting $200 million from the governor for these programs. So that was just a huge win for the state of California. And, it's just a testament as to the work that Moms was already doing, raising awareness and tweeting and using the power of social media to create change. And this is just setting the tone for the rest of the country and why these programs are so important. We see that now with the Biden administration. They're even now talking about it. So it's just so huge. And I'm so proud of the state of California and our volunteers and everybody that they worked with to make that happen. It's just amazing.
So I want our audience to understand something, because I think that when people talk about Moms Demand Action, everyone thinks, oh, well, of course you're going to support that. Nobody is for gun violence. Nobody is for, lack of gun safety. But that's not true at all, right? You face tremendous resistance because there's so much money involved. Is that really where the core of the resistance comes from? Is the money that is inherent in all of this, especially for politicians looking for re-election, which every single freaking one of them is every single freaking day up for re-election, right?
Yeah, I would say it's two things. So one is certainly money. I mean, the NRA has long been one of the most powerful, most wealthy special interests that's ever existed in our nation's history. They learned a lot from other special interests and where they fell down so that they wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. For example, they learned from the tobacco industry that they should have immunity so they can't be sued for liability when their products are misrepresented. Congress gave that to them in the 90s. And as a result, they've never had to worry about the bankruptcy or the costs that come with being accountable for your products. So they've learned a lot. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of power and influence. That's certainly waning, and in large part thanks to Moms Demand Action. But the other piece of it is that they've inculcated an entire generation of lawmakers with this belief that they were to be feared. And I think there's still some senators, clearly, who are still playing from that playbook, right? Now, if you go back to 2008, when President Obama was elected, about a quarter of all Democrats in Congress had an A rating from the NRA. Today, none do. So that's a sea change in terms of American politics, right? That the Democrats learned our lesson that we taught them, which is if you do the right thing, we'll have your back. If you do the wrong thing, we'll have your job. And we've done that over and over again. But Republicans are, as with many social issues, slower to be on the right side of history. Now, we're seeing some Republicans that have stood up and supported this issue. Congressman Chris Smith, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, Senators Collins and Murkowski have occasionally done the right thing. So that is starting to change. But again, going back to this idea of this is a marathon, not a sprint, it does take years, if not decades, to remove the fingers that are the stranglehold that the gun lobby has on some of our lawmakers. But the good news is 90% of Americans support us, 89% of Republican voters, 87% of gun owners in this country support stronger gun laws. Only 1 in 10 even belongs to the NRA. So this is an issue that is inevitable. It is going to happen. We're seeing huge movement at the state level, in city councils, in school boards, and even in boardrooms. It's just the Senate. This is the only place this is polarizing right now in America, is the U.S. Senate.
One of the things that I really admire about what you're doing, you've mentioned survivors and the word survival a lot tonight. But there's also something about what you do that not only allows folks that have been through this traumatic experience to survive, you allow them to thrive. And I think that's part of why Moms Demand Action is so important, so necessary, and so inspirational. And it was that also, again, as a fellow organizer, as a fellow activist, I've learned so much from what you've done thus far, and having you in the room, as it were, I want to selfishly pick your brain, but I also feel like it's good for our community too. How much of that was a dedicated idea of survival is not enough. We need to thrive.
Right from the beginning, we realized something that made people act was hearing the stories of survivors. So it wasn't just sort of this big picture issue that people couldn't sort of get a hold of, right? When you bring it down to the micro level, when you tell someone's story and what they've experienced, it becomes very real. And if you have empathy, if you have compassion, it's hard not to act or to feel a certain way about an issue. So the more we told those stories, the more survivors got involved in the organization. And I think the statistics are something like 1 in 3 Americans have experienced gun violence in some way, whether it's themselves or a loved one or someone they know. I mean, that's just sort of unimaginable. And so we created something called the Everytown Survivor Network, which is where our survivors work together to support one another, to comfort one another, to learn from one another, and also to advocate with one another. Survivors are also volunteers in Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action, but it's important that we learn best practices from survivors. And we're so grateful that survivors are part of our coalition. Because when we go and talk to lawmakers, obviously the same stories we were telling that got activists involved, it's the same way to get lawmakers involved and to change hearts and minds and to get them to act. And here in California, Alex, I know that our chapter has a lot of different survivors who work with us and also go with us to Sacramento when we're having advocacy days.
Alex, do you find that something that is the most far-reaching impressions that you make when you have days like that, when you have moments like that, where you can connect on the individual level?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the stories that we're sharing from people, and those are the things that it's happening so much that you really need to come back to. These are real people that we're talking about. And we're frankly just sick and tired of the whole thoughts and prayers. We need action. And so it's just so important to keep sharing these stories and to continuing to saying the names of these people. I think that's what's creating the change.
And I can't tell you how many survivors have said to me, I wish I had been involved in gun violence prevention before it came to my family, to my community. And I think that's the other piece of this, which is you don't wait until it's your school, it's your community, it's your streets. Get involved now, because the only way to affect change is strength in numbers in this country, right? So everyone uses their voices, everyone uses their votes on this issue. You know how the most people come into our organization? It's actually because they're parents who have sent their kids to kindergarten for the first time and they have to do a lockdown drill. And the idea that a 5-year-old is somehow going to make a decision whether they should run, fight, or hide from someone who has a semi-automatic rifle is just so incredibly bizarre and unacceptable that how can you not act? How can you not get involved? And that's what we want to communicate to everyone.
Yeah, and that's so crystal to me, that idea that we have accepted, that so many people have accepted, and thankfully so many folks have not. But the vast majority of folks go to school and they're like, oh yeah, it's a live shooter drill. And that's just par for the course. That's something we do every month. The fact that we allow that we don't each and every time it happens say, this is not acceptable. There shouldn't be a reason that we have to do this, and there are ways to avoid it. That's what's so crazy making, right? So I want to ask you about that. Self-care, as the kids say, is so important. And many of us do not do it the right way or at all. And I am guilty of that myself, 100. It must be that much more difficult for the two of you to pick up the newspaper or to go to Twitter in the morning and see, or you must have to brace yourself, I would think, every day, right? So help our audience, help our viewers, help our community understand. One, and this is a two-part question, so as they say, a follow-up. One, how do you organizationally allow yourselves to deal with what you know is going to happen almost on a daily basis? And two, if you would please share, if not overstepping, how you personally both deal with that. Because I can imagine this being what you do and having to face this violence, both literally and figuratively, every single day. How do you, and I know you can't shield yourself from it, but there must be some way that you allow yourselves to survive the day yourselves, and hopefully sometimes even thrive.
I would say for me, I have the personality where seeing this violence, and yeah, there are many times I wake up and find out there's been a horrific mass shooting overnight, or you're telling the story of someone's child, and it just, that kid looks so much like your own kid, and you think, I've got kids at college, I've got kids who are teachers, I've got kids who are working, and it could be them, right? And it makes, I think I have this heightened sense of always being in danger. In fact, my son called me over the weekend and asked if he could get a job as a DoorDash driver. And I said, absolutely not. I have tweeted way too many times about DoorDash drivers being shot. That is a non-starter. You are not going to do that. And then he's like, well, what job could I get? And I said, I can't think of any. Like, I can't think of any jobs you could take where I haven't imagined you could be shot. So maybe just take classes this summer. But my personality makes me angry when I see gun violence, and I see what I think is a huge injustice, something that is senseless and preventable. And that anger is what motivates me, right? Sort of this righteous anger that I am turning on not myself or other people, but on activism. But certainly there are days where it's just a little too much. And I do engage in a lot of self-care. I'm an exercise fanatic. I meditate. I watch horrible television, all the Housewives franchises. These are ways to escape for me. I have an incredibly supportive family who thinks, I'm a badass. If they were afraid for me, I don't know that I could have ever done this. If I'm afraid, they're always like, don't be afraid, you can do this. And that may just be because, 5 young adults want you to stay out of their business. And so they're like, no, seriously, do work as much as you want to. But I think at the end of the day, when I see gun violence survivors doing this work, which I think is nothing less than heroic, right? That you would have been impacted yourself by gun violence, and then you would wake up every day and work to protect the lives of absolute strangers. That's heroic. And so if people who are gun violence survivors can do this work, then certainly I can too.
I totally agree. It is that anger that fuels my motivation to get involved. I lived in a country where there are gun owners and common sense gun laws, except we don't have the same amount of gun violence in Europe than here in the United States. So I know that it's possible, and yet it's happening every single day, everywhere. And we just saw it at a baseball game, which is ridiculous. And so the first thing I thought of was, I have tickets to go see the Giants game on my daughter's 9th birthday next week. And now I have to think about, oh, well, that's just one other place that I have to think about whether or not I can get out safely somewhere. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go to the movies or a concert, or have my kids not be exposed at school for this. So even road rage incidents are growing at the moment. So it doesn't matter anymore where you're at. You're just not safe anymore. And so it's that anger that makes me want to get involved and do it every single day. But at the same time, because I'm going up and down the state, working as a volunteer for our organization, there are so many days that I spend without my children because I'm doing this work. And other times I'm finding an excuse to be busy so that I'm not around my family, because I've been around them all summer, all COVID. But at the same time, there are things that become another layer as to, am I even good enough to continue this work? Am I good enough as a partner, as a mom? And then all these things start to really weigh on you. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm a volunteer with this organization, and we offer BetterHelp. And so I use BetterHelp. I talk to a therapist. She helps me out with not only the gun violence part of it, but everything else that's going on right now. And so for me, self-care is just taking a step back and knowing that there is another volunteer that's willing to step up whenever I feel like I can't do it anymore or I need to take a break. Shannon and I have taken walks together and things like that. So all those things help as well. And we don't even talk about gun violence when we hang out. We talk about celebrity crushes and things like that. So it's just amazing. And to know that there are so many volunteers in your area that know what you're going through, that can make you laugh and help you forget about certain things. And then when you're ready, you step back in and you kick ass again. Yep. So it's pretty awesome. It's just a sisterhood in every sense. And it's just amazing.
And I want to thank you, Shannon. I'm sure that was your directive to create, I believe that Alex called it a BetterHelp. Is that a program that works with your volunteers and the folks in Moms Demand to make sure that their mental health is being supervised and taken care of?
So Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action are the grassroots arm of Everytown. And Everytown and the Everytown Survivor Network have done some really important work on best practices around making sure that we are supporting the mental health needs of not just our employees, but the survivors who work for us. But yes, we do it that way so that people have access to free mental health support.
And I want to say on behalf of our community, we appreciate that, because mental health is such a forgotten piece of the work that we do. So again, it's wonderful that you're looking out in that way. I want to just pursue this one last question. Are there moments that you can find joy in this work?
Yes. Again, I want to be clear that even though it's tragic and it feels like it's taking a long time, we're actually winning. We have passed background checks in 21 states. We have passed something called a red flag law now in 19 states. We've closed something called the Charleston loophole now in 19 states. We've passed laws that disarm domestic abusers in 29 states. We have sent home our Be Smart materials about secure gun storage to over 1.5 million families in this country. We have gotten hundreds of companies to change their corporate policies around guns inside their restaurants and stores. This is all work that's being done on the ground day after day. And it is how you build momentum that eventually points the right president and the right Congress in the right direction. I have a daughter who's gay, and she can't imagine a world in which she couldn't marry her girlfriend, and doesn't realize that work was done on the ground by activists for decades that finally led to that freedom, to that right being given to her that should have been intuitive and there already, but people fought for it. And I don't think gun violence prevention is any different, right? Quietly, every single day, like drips on a rock, this work is being done. We are winning. We are taking on the gun lobby. And I know we're all waiting for this cathartic moment in Congress, but I promise that it is coming.
And Alex, what about you? Is there joy that you can find? I know it's not an everyday thing, but are there moments of that you can find in the work?
Yeah, I know that my kids are watching. They're 6 and 8. And I know that when I'm gone and when I'm doing all this work, they know that I'm actually doing something right, because I chose to stay in this country, not to go back to Holland after Trump won the election. But I knew I wanted to be a part of change. And in order to do that, I had to get involved. And so a lot of our volunteers got involved because of Sandy Hook and school shootings and all that. And now, almost a decade later, some of our kids that were so young back then are getting involved with us. So it's not only about gun violence, but they're getting involved in all these other social issues as well. And so that brings me joy, is that the next generation is, stepping up and getting involved too. I love that. And I love the fact that my kids see me and they're talking about things, because if they're young enough to be exposed to gun violence and intruder drills, as they call them, then they can start having the conversation on how to get involved and create change themselves. And I'm super excited that we have Students Demand Action and that they're so involved, and they're just going to take it from here. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's, I have to say, I was a school teacher, public school teacher for 23 years. And when one of my former students walks in the center and wants to volunteer, wants to work with us, there's no feeling that can beat that. So I totally understand how you feel about that. And when you see that's an incredible moment when someone that you've helped or someone that you've taught or someone that you've, brought along with the journey then joins you as an equal, as a partner, as a fellow co-conspirator. It's a pretty amazing feeling. I wanted to revisit one thing that we talked about earlier, Alex. We talked about stories and how important these stories are to hear of survivors, and how meaningful that is, impactful that is. And in the queer community, that's something that we've known for a long time, right? That's something that the more face you put on an issue, the more people will react in a way. Oh, right, that's a member of my family. That's a friend. That's someone I know. That's a neighbor. So I'm sure that's part of what you do in California too, is bring that knowledge from the LGBTQI community in your activism there to Moms Demand. Is that something that was allowed you to kind of even maneuver more easily into the work that you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I take so much pride in being a native San Franciscan, and so many of those issues started in San Francisco. Harvey Milk himself is a victim of gun violence. And so, every year for myself in the Hispanic community, 3,200 people die from gun violence every single year. And when you're Latinx and you're a part of the gay or trans community, that social stigma and lack of acceptance from family members becomes another difficult layer to navigate. Just this year, we've already seen at least 29 transgender or gender non-conforming people fatally shot or killed. And we say at least because we don't really even know too often. These things go so unreported. But the majority of these people are Black or Latinx people. So it's just, for me, something that I feel so passionate about. And I'm going to keep working to raise this awareness. So yeah, it's super important. And I feel like a lot of the statistics that we talk about, the 100 Americans that die every single day from gun violence or are shot and wounded, suicide statistics, those all apply to us as well. So we can't forget about that.
And we thank you for that. It's so important. Again, we said at the outset when we first introduced you, but that intersectionality that we can bring to all our movements, it's something that's imperative, especially right now, as we come out of the pandemic, and let me be crystal about that, because I don't want to use the wrong, we're not coming out of the pandemic. We're still in the midst of the pandemic, but we are slowly finding the light at the end of the tunnel. And I want everyone to take care, because I think people are moving a little too quickly, and I want to make sure that our community is hearing that. Sorry. But the second piece is we have faced the past year also the epidemic of systemic racism with the murder of George Floyd, and how people took to the streets for a wonderful summer of action, and still people are on the streets right now as we're talking. And Moms Demand has been integral in that and been supportive of that. And you mentioned before, Shannon, Black Lives Matter, and making sure that you're intersecting with those communities as well. So I knew that this hour would go so quickly, and I want to thank you both so much for your time. And we have a few minutes, and I want to spend this few minutes. It's really important to us as a community and to our viewers to talk about direct action, because now we've been inspired. We've talked about your personal journeys. We talked about platitudes and principles and ideas and the importance of the work you're doing and how successful it's been. So can you give us some real ideas of direct action. One, to be involved with Moms Demand Action, which I'm sure some in our audience now want to be. How could they not be? Seeing two fabulous folks like yourself. But two, in a more general sense, and especially Shannon, for you, how can your personal journey impart some meaningful ideas of how, oh, I see this in my community, it needs to change. How do I change that? Going from the first Facebook post to creating a national movement that has empowered tens of thousands and made crucial change in the arena of legislation and in the social arena as well.
Yeah, so, I would first say we need everyone to join us. We are not just moms, we're not just women, we're mothers and others, we're also students. So if you text the word READY to 64433, someone will get back in touch with you right away. Again, you text the word READY to 64433. You can go to momsdemandaction.org, or you can go to Twitter, where we're at Moms Demand, same on Instagram. And it's really important, even if you only have, an hour to spare a month to get involved, and you will meet your people. I talk to so many of our volunteers who say, I have met the best friends I'm going to have. These are the people I'm going to retire with in this little mobile home community. These are my people. Like, I have met them through Moms Demand Action. So I think there's that benefit of creating friends and relationships through the organization as well. In terms of how do people do this, in their neighborhood, in their community, in their state, across the country, that's why I wrote the book, Fight Like a Mother. All proceeds go to gun violence prevention organizations. I would highly recommend picking up a copy of that, because I write step by step how we did this, how other people can do it. And it really, at the end of the day, it is just about jumping in, right? If I had waited until all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted, I still wouldn't have started Moms Demand Action. I was drinking from a fire hose for many years, and certainly was not the right person to do this. And yet here we are. I felt passionately about something. I instinctively knew that something was missing from the national conversation, and I jumped in with both feet. And the worst thing that could have happened was that I failed, and I would be doing something else right now with my life. But we didn't fail, and we're now the largest, most successful grassroots movement in the country. So a big part of it is just being unafraid to jump in.
And Alex, anything you want to share, individually? Because I think it's wonderful that what I would love about this conversation is we have Shannon talking about organizationally and on the national platform, and we have you, who has your individual journey and what you've done, but you've now you've created a statewide movement in and of yourself. Bringing this banner across the state, as you talked about earlier. Is there direct action that you feel, in your experience, you could also advise folks to get involved at the outset?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there is nothing like introducing myself and saying, I'm Alex Navarro and I'm with Moms Demand Action. It brings a smile to my face. And every time I put the red shirt on, it's just like, I feel like the Hulk or something, like, yeah, we're going to get stuff done. So, and it doesn't matter what your area of expertise is. We have a job for you. I'm a photographer, and I was just taking pictures of all our events and tweeting it out there and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. You could do this too. And I felt like a lot of my friends and family were like, wow, you're doing all these things, and that's really cool. And I'm like, you could do it too. Just text the word READY to 64433. Come on. So yeah, it's just, like I said earlier, we've done so many amazing things. The work that we're doing is life-saving. And, you get to meet all these amazing people. I mean, I never thought that I would be backstage in Iowa with Shannon, and like Eddie Vedder's right there and his wife and stuff. And we're just like, hey, what's up? So a lot of cool things happening, but really important work to be done. So I feel like, please join us. We need you. Hopefully we'll share stories about cool things that you've done in your community.
And that's the thing I want everyone to know in our community, our viewership. you think of Moms Demand Action as this huge monolith, and everyone, they're so successful, and there's so many people involved. That is true, but you still need so many more. So don't think, oh, they're doing it, they're getting it done. No, they need you to do it. They need you to get it done as well. And everything you mentioned, Shannon, is in the comments section tonight. So our folks can go right there. There's going to be a link to our bookshop.org dedicated Power Hour list where people can buy Fight Like a Mother, and all the proceeds go to the organization. So we support you in that. You can click that link and go right there and get the book. And everything you've heard tonight and so much more is there. You'll be inspired, and it's really also a fantastically entertaining read as well. The Twitter and the social media and the website and the texting is all there as well in the comment section, so folks can easily reach Moms Demand Action. I want to thank you both so much for being with us tonight. That in and of itself is inspirational, and we so thank you for your time, energy, and spirit shared with our community. But more so, and to the nth degree, what you've done for our nation as an example to the world, and made America seem less crazy. We appreciate that. You both are extremely badass, and you inspire us each and every day. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Be well, both of you. That is Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action, and Alex Navarro, California City Gun Violence Co-Lead. Thank you both. Be well and be good. Best to your families. So that is the Power Hour for tonight. I hope you were as inspired as I was sitting here. I'm sure even more so. What an incredible conversation. What an inspirational conversation. Meaningful, impactful, and even a bit fabulous. What wonderful, wonderful, badass women. And please do join up with Moms Demand. They can use the help. We could use the help. The nation can use the help. Our children can use the help. So do your part. Thank you all for being with us. Please do come back to the Power Hour too. We are here each and every weeknight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We need you to build this community as well. We are here for you. Please be here with us. So until tomorrow, much love and respect, y'all. Be good to each other. Be good to your families, chosen or otherwise. And most especially, please, as you heard tonight, Shannon herself said it. So if Shannon said it, you have to do it. Be good to yourselves. You need it, and we need you here with us.
We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.